Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight? Do you feel like you're constantly starting over with your nutrition and fitness? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse, and I too have been there. At the age of 44, I decided I was done with being stuck in the vicious diet cycle. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best Formula for women who are ready to do things differently. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, get your energy back, build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good, then you're in the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's build your formula for feeling your best. Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. And today, let's talk about how to make your healthy habits your default setting. What do I mean by that? Well, we all know what default settings are, right? Like on your computer or your phone, when you open them up from the factory, these are the settings that the manufacturer has placed there that they consider the ideal settings on your device, that it's almost like a fallback where they want to ensure that you get the functionality and the outcome that you want, but you have the ability to change those things. Like perhaps you want to change your ringtone, or you want to change the background screen, or whatever you want to do to make it your own. But when you buy that device, they have to have something there to ensure that the very basic functions are available to you. And that's what a default is. And defaults are so important because when it comes to our habits, we want to have habits that are our default setting, that are brainless, that you can stick to even when times are difficult and you're off schedule and things are happening in your life that feel out of your control. When you have these default habits, it feels abnormal to you to not be doing them and to miss them or skip them. And as I was writing the script for this episode, I really thought back to that time that kind of brought me here, where my family was just going through a lot of stressors. Day to day, I never was sure, am I going to get a phone call? Is someone going to need me? And there was a lot of uncertainty when I started my day as to exactly what my day was going to look like. But throughout that time, I was able to work out at least a few days a week. And it felt odd to me if I wasn't able to get a workout in, and being able to get that workout in, which in its own right for myself is therapy for me. It helps me take out angers and frustrations and take that energy and channel it in a more positive way. And I do think that movement and using your body and releasing all those feel good endorphins when you do a hard workout, that absolutely can help with your mental health. And I'm so thankful that I already had a really solid habit of working out during that time, and that I work out from home. I think during that time, if I had been reliant on going to a gym or something like that, there would have been a much higher likelihood that I would not have stuck to my habits in that same way. And that's what I want for you, that when times are tough and they're hard and everything isn't set up to necessarily support you in your healthy habits, that your healthy habits become your default. And I'm not sitting here preaching to you from a pedestal saying, oh my gosh, well, I've always worked out and I have always had these habits. I didn't work out for years. There were periods of years where I did not work out at all. I was definitely not an athlete. I didn't play any sports. Um, I briefly did softball in middle school. I was not any good at it. Um, and for me, working out and fitness usually looked like going to an aerobics class at the Y here and there when I was a teenager. I think I did some Pilates classes here and there, but I was not someone where I would say fitness was at all a consistent part of my life until I was in my mid 30s and really decided that I wanted to become someone who worked out consistently. So I am not at all preaching to you saying that, you just have to be this person. If you're not that person right now, I am proof that you can become that person. And definitely the biggest piece of me becoming someone who consistently worked out, I flipped that switch when we built our home gym. Because prior to that, I would go to the Y and I would be very much be all in or all out. Going for months and months and months with going to the gym very regularly, and then going months and months and months with not going to the gym. And once I started working out at home, I honestly don't think I've missed more than a week of workouts unless I went on vacation or I'm sick or something like that. So, my workouts for me are probably my most important default setting because it's so much more to me than working out to get skinny or look good in a bikini or what have you. Like, I'm so far beyond that way of thinking. For me, my workouts are for my long term health, so I can be stronger, so I can feel good about myself, and so I can have those mental health benefits. And the fact that it helps you look better, in my mind, is just icing on the cake. And life is never going to give you a long stretch of time where it's really easy to put your healthy habits first, unless you simply make it part of who you are as a person. You are always going to have times where work is difficult, maybe something at home is difficult, unless you are single and you make a ton of money and you have a huge support system. Most likely, it is going to be a challenge creating these habits, especially when you are a beginner. And the biggest mistake is, in my opinion, that people plan their habits for life being perfect and they overshoot what they believe they can actually stick to in any situation. And I think it's much better to dial it back. And I see this in my own clients where we start with just very foundational, what is the bare minimum we can do? And then the confidence and the results that come from creating consistency at that bare minimum level, it snowballs and they start craving more and wanting to do more. And it's a really interesting process to see unfold, especially when we've come from this diet culture of work out 5 or 6 days a week and follow the super strict diet plan. And I do the exact opposite with you. I teach you how to do the bare minimum and we build from there. So these default settings are really about finding what is your bare minimum that you can be consistent with. So, first off, let's just understand habits and routines create who we are. They create our life. The day-to-day life that we live is who we are. And you can be dreaming of some far off day when your life looks completely different, but that doesn't change the exact moment, the present moment that you're in right now, and what your day to day life that you are living looks like. And that is created by your habits, and they influence how you will experience your life tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. So our habits are who we are today, and they are also, our habits are who we are becoming as a result of those habits. And This is all because of what's known as the habit loop. So, the first step in the habit loop is the cue. This is the trigger that tells you, okay, it's time to do our habit. Let's just stick with the workout example. So, this means your alarm goes off in the morning and I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to have my coffee, or I'm going to have my pre-workout. I'm going to put my gym clothes on and I'm going to do my workout. And that is your cue. It is saying this is what you've committed to and this is what we're doing right now. You've got it calendared in your calendar telling you right now, in this present moment, this is the expectation of where you should be and what you should be doing. So then we have the routine, which is the action that you take after the cue. Your alarm goes off, you've got to put the workout clothes on. Now it's time to actually do the workout. And this can be a positive or negative thing as well. We can also have cues, such as maybe you have a family member that stresses you out every time you talk to them. And that triggers you to go eat some chocolate every time you talk to them. And I'm saying this from experience. I have someone in my life where I noticed every time I interact with them, I go and reach for a candy bar because I need to self-soothe after I talk to them. It took me decades to realize that this was my response to this individual. But once I did, I thought, oh my gosh, that is just a habit. It is a way that I have been dealing with this person for a very long time. So that cue and then the routine that follows the cue, the habit, it can be good, it can be bad. We all have this habit loop in some way, shape, or form in our life. The third part of the habit loop is the reward. It could be that positive feeling that we get where we're so proud of ourselves for doing a workout. It could be that momentary relief and pleasure that we get from eating the candy, the chocolate, because we were in a state of stress and now we've added some enjoyment, some pleasure into our life. Or it could be any other benefit that then reinforces that behavior so that the next time you have that same trigger, you just automatically follow it up with that same action, habit, routine. And this plays out in so many parts of our life. And I would say a good portion of everything that you do each day is because you're in a habit loop of some sort, whether it's the drive-through that you go to on your way to work, whether it's kissing your partner goodbye in the morning when they leave for work. So many things that you do in your day-to-day life are simply because this habit loop has been created. Because over time, this habit loop just becomes automatic, where the cue triggers the routine, which then leads to the reward. This reinforces the habit. And then the next time that cue comes up, you go through it all over again. So our goal with the Feel Your Best formula is to make habits that create the life you want on autopilot and make those habits your default setting where you don't even have to think about it. Here's the thing, you already have a default setting. So think about your current habits, both the positive habits that you're happy that you have in your life, and then maybe those not so positive habits that you wish you could change and you want to change. And maybe you're listening to this podcast because you desire that change. Do you hit the snooze button, or do you automatically eat a big bowl of ice cream every night after dinner? Do you always order an appetizer, drinks, and dessert every time you go out to eat? Do you wake up and immediately put your workout clothes on? Do you look at your credit card statement at the end of the month or every day? What types of purchases are on there? What groceries do you buy every week? Ultimately, all these habits are leading you somewhere. And is it the destination that you want to live? And I would say looking at your credit card statement can also, in many cases, tell you what your habits are. What are you spending your money on? Look at your grocery receipt. What types of foods are on that grocery receipt? That's your default setting. All of these observations that you're making, this is your default setting that you are living in right now. And it's going to be a mixed bag. There's going to be some things that you feel good about. There's going to be other things that you're kind of on the fence about. And there's other things that every time you go through that habit loop, such as eating the bowl of ice cream or, choosing to scroll on your phone instead of doing a workout, those habit loops over time erode at your self-confidence because you're feeling like you are not being the person that you would prefer to be. So now that we've looked at your default setting, how do we move forward? And it starts with setting clear goals and clear intentions in setting the direction, deciding what direction do I want to go in. And once you've gotten honest about your goals and what you would like your life to look like, I invite you to actually visualize, what does it look like to be that person? A day in the life. What would that look like for you? What does your day-to-day habits, what are the things that you do? How do you feel when you have become the person that has those habits as your default setting? I know a lot of us think about setting goals like losing 10 pounds or running a marathon, but those are outcome goals. And I actually believe setting habit goals are a lot more effective. And I find in my clients that that is a much more effective place to start because they focus on the here and now instead of thinking about someday when you reach your goals. They're realistic. You are setting those habit goals for your day-to-day life and making that commitment to yourself and taking action on those habits just gives you such a sense of pride and accomplishment because it's not just about the destination. You want to enjoy the journey that you take that gets you there. And I think goals are great for helping you set the course and direction of your habits. But I can't tell you how many times in my own life and in my clients' lives where you start going in one direction. And because you're learning along the way, you're learning about yourself, you're learning about what you really want, you actually decide to change those goals. Most of my clients come to me with the idea in their mind that they want to lose weight, they feel overweight, they feel out of shape, they don't feel good. And then as they work on building their relationship with food, as they see themselves start getting stronger, as their confidence builds and they stop equating happiness and confidence with being skinny or seeing a smaller number on the scale, often they choose to continue to get stronger before moving on to a fat loss phase. When they came to me, the only thing they could think about was wanting to lose weight. But in reality, they just didn't like the way they felt. They didn't have energy. They didn't have habits that made them feel good. And creating this default setting where every day they wake up and they pretty much, at least, aiming for about 80% accuracy, they stick to their goals each day and it changes who you are. And they're going to be, honestly, just as proud of themselves without seeing that weight loss as they will be when they finally go through that fat loss phase. But when they start, they think they're only going to be happy when they finally lose the weight. Does that make sense? So right now, I want you to think about, what does that day actually look like for you? Like, really think about, from the minute you wake up in the morning, what are all the things that you do? What kind of foods are you going to eat? What kind of clothes are you going to put on? Where are you going to do your workouts? Are you going to get outside for a walk with your dog? Are you going to ask your kid to come work out with you? Are you going to make different choices at the grocery store? And just think of all those things in your day that add up, right? Because everything we do takes time and energy. And when you're looking at the changes you want to make, you've got to get super clear about what that day actually looks like and the time you are setting aside for these habits and that you're blocking off. And I have one piece of advice for you here. Add an additional 15 to 30 minutes to any new habit that you're trying to create. So if you're trying to do a 30-minute workout or a 45-minute workout, I want you to block off at least 45 minutes to an hour, because there's so many little things that go into getting your workout in that are above and beyond the 30-minute quote workout. You got to put your shoes on, you got to turn on the TV, you got to get your equipment, you got to put your equipment away. So if you're only blocking off 30 minutes in your calendar to do this 30-minute at-home workout, you're going to find yourself rushed and overwhelmed, and you have to be super honest about what does it actually look like? What does it actually feel like? How much time realistically is it going to take to do this? And that means there might need to be some give and take with the other things that are on your plate. I'll say that intention, visualization, honesty, and being crystal clear about what that looks like is so powerful as you start shaping this new person that you are becoming. So don't just arbitrarily say, I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to work out all the time. I'm going to do all these things and just kind of force it all to happen. Instead, be intentional, be honest about what you can really stick to, because you're going to set yourself up for burnout and failure if you do not get realistic about what your actual moment to moment life is going to look like when you start adding in these habits. So once you have an idea of what your goals are and what are the habits that you're going to create in your life, you've got to make an action plan. And what I recommend doing is build an overall plan that is the least you can do that will still have an impact. We're looking for what's known as ROI, which is return on investment. So for example, start with 2 workouts per week, or just tracking your food without worrying about hitting any sort of macro goal. Just practice that habit of tracking your food, learning how to use the app that you're tracking in, and realize that your habits don't have to be big and overwhelming and complicated to literally change your life. It's probably hard for you to believe that 2 well done strength training workouts per week can actually change your body, but they literally can, and I have seen it in action. When we are coming off of decades of over-exercising, under-eating, over-dieting, and being told that that's the only way we can get results, it sounds like totally foreign concept that you could actually get results working out 2 days a week. But this is part of the problem in our society. This is the problem we face as women, is we don't do it because we can't go totally crazy and work out 5 or 6 days a week. It's just not feasible, especially if you're working full time, you have a family, and you have a lot on your plate. So then what happens? You do nothing because you think, well, yeah, I could do 2 workouts per week, but what's the point? I am not going to look any different. I'm not going to feel any different. And I'm telling you, you do 2 total body strength training workouts per week, you're going to get stronger. You're going to change your body composition. Of course, you've got to make sure that your nutrition is supporting those goals, but it's totally worth it. But if you don't work out because you think that it's only worth working out 5 days, if you can do it 5 days a week, then you are doing yourself a disservice. And it's not your fault. It's what you've been told. And it's all basically a big lie. So build that plan where just see what is the bare minimum that I can do and that I can stick to. And then start establishing routines that are going to support your ability to follow through on your plan. So you have your action plan, You're going to be doing workouts, you're going to be changing your grocery shopping, doing a little bit of meal planning, meal prepping, making sure that you're eating more vegetables, fruits, and you're just making these little shifts, right? So let's start having an evening routine, a morning routine, and a weekly routine where, we're meal planning, and just start embedding those little supportive habits along the way that help make it easier to take action on those larger habits that feel a little hard for you right now. I'm not going to go totally into detail. I would suggest that you listen to my episodes on routines and the 4 essential routines. So go back and dive into those. I'm not going to get into the weeds with that right now. But once you start creating these default habits, it's because you're seeing that you can do it at this lower expectation. And if you're trying to follow a plan, just a cookie cutter plan that you found online or found on Instagram, or maybe you signed up for something, you're given this cookie cutter plan that says you have to do this many workouts and you have to eat this way and all that stuff. And if you're continuing to try to force those habits into your life that were not at all made for you, and you're unable to stick to it and you end up pretty much doing nothing, then that's a complete waste of time. You're going to be much better served to start small and build from there. I think it's a lot easier to tweak a habit, build on a habit, rather than trying to just force yourself to do a 180 and become someone that you clearly are not right now. And there's a growth process that happens because you have to take responsibility and accountability for being part of that journey. And that means that you have ownership in it, and it means that you are more likely to stick to it when you are part of the decision-making process rather than just following a cookie cutter plan. I'm a big believer in habit stacking, like linking your new habits to existing habits, getting on the scale every morning. When I brush my teeth, I know I have to get on the scale. Those two habits are just linked together. Tracking your progress, make sure that you have some way of seeing right in front of you, whether you're ticking off using a habit tracker to track your workouts, or you print out some sort of calendar and you X off the days that you do a workout. But it is really fulfilling to see it written down right in front of you and see in that, black and white, yes, this is what I'm doing. It's very rewarding to do that. And you have to learn how to hold yourself accountable. You can ask others for help. Again, I have a whole podcast episode on the importance of self-accountability, but you can do it with a friend, or you can join some sort of group, or you can hire a coach. But at the end of the day, ultimately, no one is going to care more about your life than you do, and no one should care more. And I think the only little asterisk I would say there is, as a mother, I think we do care more about our children. That is just a very special thing. But in general, you should care the most about yourself, right? This is your life, and no one else has to live in your body. No one else has to face the consequences of your actions. I mean, you might be putting some pretty serious consequences on other people if you don't take care of yourself, but they can always choose to not be involved in those consequences as well. So just remember, this is your life, and you are the only one that 100% has to deal with the outcome of your choices. And it's a really great feeling once you realize that you can take ownership, and you're going to be so proud of yourself when you are part of that process, again, rather than just doing things because, other people want you to. It has to be an inside job. I do believe that we should celebrate our success along the way. I'm not a big believer in buying yourself like a big gift or anything, like when you lose your weight or whatever. I actually think the outcome, the results that you get, is the best celebration. It is the best gift that you can get yourself. But small things like buying some new workout gear, maybe you've had your eye on a piece of equipment. I mean, it is really interesting as you start becoming someone who prioritizes health and wellness. When we started building our home gym, it was just so funny how both my husband and I would get ideas of the things we want to add to it and how we would just immediately go out and buy it or make sure that that's on the list for a holiday or birthday. And it's just because it's the person you become. And I would much rather have a new dumbbell set or other piece of gym equipment than a day at the spa because that's just where my priorities lie. And again, this is something where you grow into the person that has those habits, even if it is not something that today, listening to this episode, you can't even imagine it. Think to yourself about the things that make you happy in life, and you're like, that's weird. I would never want to get dumbbells for a birthday gift because then that would mean I wouldn't get this other thing that right now is the thing that I want. And that's what happens when you change who you are as a person. Your priorities change. And you can change at any time in your life. There's no one that says you even have to be the same person you are right now, 10 minutes from now, a week from now, a month from now. You can always just choose to show up a new and different way. So, I want to talk about one of my clients that really started with the bare minimum. And she's in her late 40s. She was already eating a lot of healthy foods. She loves healthy food, but not at all intentionally. She was not tracking. She didn't know anything about macros. And she had not worked out consistently in years. She would go on walks and things like that, but she hadn't done a workout program and she hadn't really committed to anything. She was only getting about 3,000 to 5,000 steps in per day. And while she has a long history of some really great habits, and she's done a lot of dieting and a lot of workout programs over the years, right now, when she started working with me, she really was not doing anything that remotely resembled the habits that she started to build. She loves to cook, she loves food, and she has a very demanding job. And she's hybrid, meaning she works at home some days of the week and she goes into the office other days of the week. The vast majority of my clients, that is what their day-to-day life looks like now, where many of them have work from home days and then also going into the office days, or a lot of them actually just work from home. So when you have this variety of some days look like this and some days look like that, you really do have to be intentional about building a weekly routine that, works for you, where you feel good about what you can do on a day-to-day basis, recognizing that it's going to be different based on what that day looks like. And I would also say she was like pretty much all my clients where what healthy foods are. Like, you've dieted, like, you get it. But this is coming off of a long history of only being focused on weight loss and dieting and being restrictive when you're, quote, watching what you're eating. And also the exercise where it was expected to be working out 5-6 days a week, which just was not feasible for her. And that's kind of why she hadn't been doing it. So what did we do? First off, she started tracking her macros at her maintenance calories. She started working out 2 days per week, sometimes 3 days per week, but we started with just let's do the minimum of 2. She bought a walking pad because she realized there just was not an easy way for her to get additional steps in. So that's where we started, just those three things. Now let's fast forward to where she is now because she was able to be consistent with those habits. She is now down over 13 pounds while eating 2,000 calories per day. She was able to do a slight deficit. She's a very small person, but still eating 2,000 calories per day. And she was able to do some great body recomposition while in that slight deficit, which means she built muscle. She was a true beginner. Remember, she hadn't been working out at all. So she was really able to capitalize on being a beginner. She tracks her food, and now she's taking 1 to 2 days off per week with tracking her food. During this time, she has had holidays, she's traveled, she's gone out to dinner, all of this while keeping her long-term goals in mind and losing the 13 pounds and sticking to the plan. Now she's working out 4 days a week. Most weeks, all of these habits have become her default setting. And that's why it's really easy for her to stick to, even when she's off schedule. And she's going to enter a true fat loss phase soon, and then we'll reevaluate what her next steps are. So she's already lost body fat because of the plan that we created for her. Always know that your starting point and how things look for you a month from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now, it's based on your needs, your goals, your body, your mental state, your mindset, your relationship with food, and you cannot compare yourself to anyone else. But look at where she started, and now look at where she is. And it's only been about 5 months since we started working together. And the thing is, this default setting, when I look at her schedule, it's overwhelming to me. She has a much more difficult day-to-day life with everything that she's juggling than I do. And she was able to make it stick because we really just went for the bare minimum. But once you're consistent and you start building that confidence and you see those results that you're creating, it makes you want to do more. And you realize you can do more because in the beginning, you don't know what you can do because you don't know what you don't know. And because you're not doing anything, because you're afraid that you can't do enough, it's just this weird, vicious cycle that you're stuck in. So doing the bare minimum leads you to be finding what's right. It's kind of like Goldilocks, right? Now, the biggest challenge when it comes to building your new habits is going to be your mindset, being ready to commit to the process and simply making the decision that you're going to figure things out. That's really at the heart of your success. I don't care what you say you want, your actions and your willingness to be coachable, be honest, and trust the process, that's going to determine how ready you are. There is no such thing as motivation when it comes to the long game. And the thing is, once you create habits that are your default, then you don't need motivation. You don't need motivation to brush your teeth or take a shower. And those habits are default settings for you. And that's what we want these other habits to look like, to the point where it's going to feel weird when you're unable to stick to those habits. And you're going to crave getting back into that schedule and routine. How to maintain them, how to keep them sustainable. Well, number one, remember you're going to have to practice your habits before they become your default mode. They're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be weird. It's going to be challenging. You might have to practice for months because remember, you have spent decades chasing goals you couldn't maintain and working so hard to build habits that were not meant to be sustainable. So it can take you a long time to start thinking differently and start creating different automatic thoughts and beliefs and habits. You might need to use things like checklists and using your calendar and reminders, and I highly encourage that, even little handwritten notes to yourself. I still use checklists and map out my daily plan. It's constantly evolving, and it keeps me in a constant state of just seeing how I can improve, even if it's just a little bit. And my default settings are always there to support me when I have a really busy day or life throws a curveball. And if you want to maintain healthy habits for the long term, the hardest part, please remember, the hardest part is just getting started and getting through those beginning phases where you're like Goldilocks and you're seeing what fits. And then you start to step into those habits and it has a snowball effect. Over time, it's going to get easier. And then ultimately, you don't even have to think about those habits. You don't have to argue with yourself. Should I do my workout? Should I skip my workout? You no longer have this mental chatter over your food choices. Should I have the salad? Should I have the French fries? You just know what that choice looks like for who you are. And remember, this consistency, it's not going to happen overnight, and you can't compare how long it takes you. The only measure you should be looking at is, are you at least moving forward? It might be 3 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's not a race. You are not competing with anyone else. You are here to build your best life. Knowledge is power, and understanding the habits that matter and what works for you is going to help you adapt and be flexible so that you can create consistency in any situation. I highly recommend a reflection, like my weekly Friday review and reset, where you just look at how things are going and make adjustments as needed. It brings you back to that intention and goal setting mindset that you started with, and then you can decide to move forward and keep doing what you're doing or tweak things as needed. It is so important to have self-compassion, understand that you're going to make quote mistakes, but also understand that anytime things don't work out the way you think you want them to, really it's just a chance to learn a lesson. I really hope that you can create habits that feel organic and true to you in your life. You don't have to try to force yourself to follow a complicated plan that is just not going to be sustainable. Think about your default setting and start making a plan now, because it can just be so simple. You could just decide right now that you're going to start taking a walk every day. It could just be as simple as that. All right, I hope today made you think about some default settings that you could start setting for yourself, and that you can start taking action, because that's what this podcast is all about. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you have a minute, if you've been tuning in and you have not yet gone and left me a 5-star review, I would appreciate it so much, because it lets other people know that this is a podcast worth tuning into. Thank you so much, and I will see you back here next week for a new episode. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you enjoyed the information and discussion we had here today, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you're serious about making changes with your nutrition and fitness, then you definitely want to join my weekly newsletter list as well. You can find the link below and more information in the episode details. That's all for today, and we will see you back here next week for a new episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast.